Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the talk. I'd like to thank Kieran for the introduction and also the invitation to speak to you here this evening, and also just the Green Foundation Ireland team for facilitating and giving me the opportunity as well, and to speak about a topic that's very close to my heart. I'm quite enthusiastic and passionate about, and all things water, the different intersectional aspects of it, and a bit of my own personal journey as well. So, hope you enjoy. I want to make it as thought provoking as possible, and to also leave a few questions out there, ask rhetorical questions, I suppose, for you to think about, and hopefully we can discuss those afterwards. So yeah, begin. So a little bit about me first as an introduction. My name is Daniel. I'm a land and water management student here in the Netherlands, and originally I had a background in statistics back home in Ireland. Um, I've been a part of the Rush Side Towns committee in North County Dublin, where I'm from, as the waterways officer, namely looking at the both the coastal and the inland waterways. So the full variety of different environments and habitats we have in the town, and also working in coastal liaison as well with the local authority and their Fingal County Council. A lot to do with representing the views and concerns and various um, issues and stuff that arises from coastal erosion issues, and coastal erosion processes along especially the North Beach in Rush, but also the South Beach as well. So that's another part of my story and background in the area of water. And I like to as well kind of describe myself as an applied environmentalist because um, often the environmentalist title can be um, you know put out in the media and in poor ways, and not so great views of our work. But I think putting applied to it onto it as well, and focusing on those practical parts, the solutions, and what I'll mention later, the pragmatic approach to things is a nice way of putting it for me, and something that I've wanted to focus on um, now and in the previous time I've been active. Now, so we'll begin with an image and introduce water um, through my own lens through this image, which is a really nice image, and also encapsulates a lot of the aspects of what I describe as water and what were really the inspirations for me, and the motivations for wanting to learn more, to try to understand things, and then um, help solve some of the problems along the way if it's possible. So just to describe it, starting in the foreground, you can see the tulips here. The North County Dublin, especially Rush, given its position on the east coast, is known for its microclimate, and the horticulture uh, industry here, market gardening, has been around for hundreds of years, and actually even motivated and encouraged growers from across Europe, actually in the Netherlands as well, to come and cultivate the, the sandy and free draining soils of North County Dublin. So there's a lot of family background of that migration happening. And then one of the crops, obviously, that can be associated with the Netherlands, but then also in Rush during certain times of the year is the tulips. Um, Going down kind of closer past the buffer here, you can just see slow tide the Rogerstown Estuary, As I'll describe now in a few minutes through my personal journey, it was really the where I had my small beginnings and had my first science project back in the day of looking at the environment here, monitoring the water, trying to understand things, making hypotheses, and yeah, just fascinating so much being nearby, um, the different water processes, um, the dynamics of the habitat, let it be the flora and fauna there, or just the abiotic features, always made me very inquisitive. So that's the main feature. And looking out then further into the background, we can see the sandbars and the different more coastal landforms as you come to the outlet of the estuary. The dunes are just around the corner to that. There's Portrane and there's the Rush side. And I suppose that's the next step along in my interest. There was the inland part, but also the coastal being on this interface between the two, where the water flows out, but where we also have the force of the waves coming in as well. And the development is on quite a large scale in the locality to do with coastal erosion, and what came to be and stuff would be a big influence as well, and something where that society and community aspect comes into it, because you start dealing with where humans and environment interact, and where you have to look at both, but that there's people vulnerable at the same time. And then finally, then going out just to the horizon, I suppose, the Irish Sea. We're on an island, so we have water surrounding us. It might be different to what we look at in the freshwater, but it's still that marine area. It's still yeah, it's such a big aspect, and again, um, dynamics, tidal dynamics, and the effects of weather, waves, and it's been another inspiration for me as well, and a way I got into this whole area. So yeah, we will move on to look at an outline. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about what was the titles in the talk. So water, but the seeing it through the lens of two themes, of technology and society. And I'll be kind of posing a question, kind of a first kind of um, uh, thought about how we can consider these things in relation to water, and then we'll see how it progresses then through the talk. Um, then I'll speak about my personal journey, which will kind of go through different events or different developments or different experiences over the past 5 years or so that really shaped my own view of things, and what were important objectives to me, or what I wanted to do, or what drove me in a different direction. So that's important to lay that foundation down. And then we'll look at the interconnectedness of water systems. Again, the title I said, from Rogerstown to the Rhine, and that's you know two very different very different catchments and water systems, but there is an interconnectedness to it, and how we look at things from this perspective. I also want to touch on my criticisms of technology in this sense as well, and how there's plenty of positives and we can do so much with it and allows us to do so much, but that we have to be mindful as well as getting too much into that circular, and taking too much approach or too much emphasis sometimes on those parts, and not looking at other things that need attention and energy and resources put into them as well. And then finally, we'll end with um, my thoughts on being a pragmatic optimist and having that approach to things. Yeah, just to start with the question about technology, sometimes a friend, sometimes a foe. How can we harness it for good? So it's can be a friend in the sense of being able to um, uh, use it to do things that wouldn't be possible before, be able to get a much broader sense of a situation, um, understand different scenarios or things that would just be too complex to do without. But maybe sometimes it can be our foe as well, relying too much on a technocratic and hard engineering approach and not taking into account what the natural behavior of an environmental system really requires, and then maybe the consequences of that could come down the road afterwards, or relying too heavily or being too confident in what it says, and then not the mindset and the approach to what the right solution is not really the one that is holistic enough, or that fairly um you know gives the right outcome for all. So again, um I suppose that pedals nicely then into those human environment relationships that we have as a society. Um, how can we collectively, as that's important for society, um, look at the human environment relationships um, on a community level, higher levels, national, international, and build the capacity and resilience you need? Because that's something that I'll bring up over and over again, that I think education, respect and understanding, and also a sense of stewardship are really important, and that has to build. And I think with those comes a resilience to many of the challenges we face to do with water through the many um, uh, uh, services and communities it provides, and also ways it can help elsewhere. So yeah, just some questions to think about and reflect on. But that's what I really want to touch on throughout in the various items. So talking about my personal journey, this is quite a personal um, talk and presentation, and coming from my perspective of um, what got me into the water area and what has influenced me moving forward, and the various different uh, changes over the years, and how others have also really helped me and shaped it, and just my overall approach to those things. So this is a really important part of seeing where I started, and then where things end up. So we'll go back about 5 years, I think, or I suppose 6 now. It's just crazy. But in 2019, it would have been in Rogerstown Estuary and the now former Blady landfill, which at that time as well, still in development, but being developed as a public park, Rogerstown Park. You can see it here in the image on the left. So area image, I've done a bit there, brush and lusk behind. And this was the former landfill, firstly developed completely unregulated, began as a like unofficial dump for various organic matters, maybe from agricultural or industries, and developed into uh, the dump and taken on by the local authority and built up to about 70 meters high, an artificial man-made hill. um, Closed around 2011, and obviously had to be then monitored by the regulatory authority, the EPA, because of leachate, which is when you have all this waste packed together, and then you have, especially given the elevation, rainfall, and then the runoff and the the seepage, um, that'll go then into the soil. You're going to have this leachate where the toxins and the heavy metals will percolate down and then finally end up in your surface waters or groundwaters, which is especially um, concerning given that this Belay landfill is situated literally in the Rogerstown Estuary. And like you can kind of make it out here in the image, but like this is the Dublin to Belfast railway with the the bridge across the estuary. Um, but you can see the outline that originally this marshy land and the area of the estuary would have gone along this boundary. So it is literally in the estuary, and Rogerstown Estuary would be classified as special area of conservation and special protection area by the Natura 2000 uh, European Union directive. So yeah, so being able to monitor these leachates as well as the methane emissions um, is really critical. So I suppose that's where my project idea came out of, because I um, was aware of this obviously and wanted to see different times of the year, different different tidal conditions, water temperature, looking at then the pH levels, the acidity, and then the turbidity, like the dirtiness of the water, and if that changed and stuff over time. So that was really interesting to look at. This plot then on the right is actually the EPA's own monitoring time series across about 10 years of monitoring leachate at various observation points around the landfill. And you can see there's great variability and yeah, like a pretty constant a constant level over the years. So as well as doing my own monitoring, um, using technology at the time, using sensors that were readily available through school, through our I was in the computer science class, and with small microprocessors like the Arduino, I was able to do my own measurements, but I was also took my first step into this vast ocean of environmental data and information that's held out there, and also about the statutory, non-statutory monitoring that um, may take place or may not, and who's responsible as well under all these regulations. So yeah, really these first small steps into the arena began with this local project. So then going into 2020, and as I was mentioning earlier, the coastal erosion issue along the North County Dublin coastline was very high on the agenda. For many previous years, it's been an ongoing issue, like something that's been happening for eternity. These processes of erosion, deposition, breaking down the sediment, building up of it again along these sandy coastlines. But I suppose after through that winter, January 2020, you can see the image there on the left. There was some really severe erosion in Portrane, and that was, threatening structures like um, back gardens and houses and public facilities, and it got a lot of attention in the national media at the political level. The Portrane issue is really the first major novel case, I suppose, of um, like a severe coast erosion threatening a whole community in Portrane, and a national approach and framework to try to look and see what the best solutions and ways of mitigating or adapting or both these problems still isn't formed, but it's a lot of it now will be based on what's happening in Portrane, and how you have to work with the community, with the technical, the scientific solutions that are available to try to find the best thing. But at the end of the day, you're up against this natural process that's going to happen either way. So yeah, so all eyes were on this, and across the water as well, and Rush, they're not as major, but they're still erosion as well. And I suppose, as a resident, someone who's interested and so nearby, I was there a lot, taking pictures and taking measurements with the measuring tapes, and there was various different monitoring that was happening at the time. But I suppose in that year it culminated in the work by the engineers in RPS being expedited to produce the CFERM study, to look at what flood defences in the case of Rush inside the Rogerstown estuaries, but what different measures and what designs could we put into place. And I suppose then that began to open my eyes then to the how society interacts with these things. These processes are happening, we're trying to understand them. That's an ongoing scientific pursuit. That's your hypothesis and your experiment and what your results are. But there's also those issues more based in a real world sense, that there's people that are angry about this, and they're upset, like, and it's very much understandable, like, given the situation. So that's where it comes to this mitigation adaptation. What can we do to mitigate this problem, in a sense, and the various many different measures were put into place. But then you have to look kind of longer term, and this issue is something that's long term. How do you adapt, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of that? So yeah, so I suppose that study gave various options, all which are still in that planning and development stage even up to now. But again, it's something, weighing up these things and considering, and what people's views on it and stuff. And so yeah, quite an interesting time. So then in 2021, we were all impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and I really had a sense of an urge to continue looking at my own development of my knowledge in this area, and to find some sort of purpose in it, I suppose. And I very luckily and fortunately, I think now in reflection, came across the World Biodiversity course that would be organised by the Leader program, but also the local authority waters program, LawPro, as many of you will know. And I suppose that was, I have to thank the people that ran that, Dr. Amanda Greer and others, because that was really where my interest then slingshot, and about how all of us can be a part of monitoring these things, and trying to understand it and learn about it, but also try to make that change as well. And that was a really nice course to be involved in. We did field work. I remember first over in Ballybockle, and then trying some myself, and met like-minded people as well, and the community part is really important because you have to have that collective sense as well. It's vital in kind of bringing things forward. Um, it was about it consisted of parts about catchments, the environment sector in Ireland, and conservation and protection. Um, and I suppose an output of that was that we got to make a pitch to our peers and to the various staff in the organisations, um, for grant funding for innovative ideas and ideas for community action projects, um, community water action projects. And one of the things um, that I came up with someone was the idea of using computer algorithms and using some linear algebra maths to be able to um, count, but also maybe in the future identify the various micro and macro invertebrates in the water, and set up observations with small cameras on hopefully an affordable scale, um, but also to have many of them so we could monitor things and understand freshwater quality on a much larger level. And again, it was really a slingshot and of like what could be possible with this stuff, and really heralded back to why I wasn't so enthusiastic and got involved in the first place of trying to understand these things. And I suppose on the technology side it was also technology data and information as well, which we'll talk about later on. I'll reflect on what exactly that kind of meant in the end, and how my views changed. But yeah, it was really about trying to understand and how these technological solutions and people getting together to operate them and run them and put them out there um, was going to help. So yeah, so a really important milestone along the journey, I suppose. Then going to 2022, so I'd done my course, bubbling with all these ideas, and I really wanted to bring them forward into tangible projects within the community, and see what we could do, and make these things happen. So through the structure, I'd been briefly involved before, but through the structure of the tide towns and the rush tide towns, in particular, I started looking at grant funding and trying to communicate with those in the local authority and the people that kind of could help put this together, and to develop some of the kind of plans and prototypes from idea. And like it was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to build the interest up, and I suppose that capacity in the organization, to for people to get involved and do this, on every level. Like I was obviously like um quite into it maybe compared to others, but like you know um there on the right you see the citizen science index, survey index, and that's just another kind of pivotal step, because I this framework and idea of being able to count your everyone on someone know about the good guys and the bad guys, and identifying these the microinvertebrates, and doing your kick sampling, and with your tray, and putting the waders on, like and being able to get your score then, and put that forward as a bit of quantitative data to say about your water quality. I just thought that like um it was engaging, and it's active, and it's a way for like young and old to get involved. And yeah, so another really step, and always then something that I keep in mind for things then going forward about what would work, has to have these elements to it, to be picked up. So the yeah, and then the outcome as well, being able to get this hard data, that was always in my mind as well. Because my objective would be, if we have this evidence, I suppose, we can go to those the decision makers, the people that would make the difference, make the policy, or get the work to be done at the local authority level or at the national level, and to be able to improve these things. Because the outlook, especially in the eastern region where we are, like, wasn't great, and still isn't the best for water quality. So yeah, that was always kind of the objective in my mind. And uh, there's other examples like the Coast Watch Ireland, so that's along the surveying along the coastline. And there's a really big community now, especially in North County Dublin, one of the kind of largest little segments, I suppose, along the coastline around the country. Um, so I think, yeah, like, I suppose in the grassroots community side, and a lovely image there of our Balcony stream, um, in Rush. But the grassroots part I really understood during this year, as well as, like, truly the way kind of we build this interest, and kind of the knowledge and the people involved. Because, like, through the national initiatives and the networks that they bring, so let it be the Law Pro, let it be Coast Watch, then you meet other local groups, people active on the ground, and they're doing different things, and that you can kind of look and say, oh, that'd be great, and ask them questions about, get advice. You can give them feedback, tell them about what you're doing, and you learn from each other. Like, it's a two-way process. And I made a lot of concrete steps forward. I think my whole understanding approach to things, I go to a plethora of different workshops, and brainstorming and discussion groups, and walkabouts. Like, some that come to mind would be the Skerries Eco Festival and the Stream Huggers, ran by Darren MacDonald and Skerries, and the group there, really pivotal in, like, me kind of seeing, oh, there's others out there that are really into this stuff, and passionate about it, and they want to kind of, I suppose, step up. They want to be the stewards, and they want to go and, like, ask the questions. It's not too hard. It might be hard, but it's not too hard for them to go try to figure it out. So I think, yeah, it captures the essence of the terms grassroots, because you had us, people who were kind of trying to bring all these things together, but we were bringing a crowd as well, behind, followed closely behind. People were bringing their kids and families and stuff were coming along, and it just struck a spark. It might have just been somewhere where they walk, or somewhere that they think nice, or just looking after your locality, but there was an interest spark there, and if we could just get more involved, again, that's building up a capacity, and then I suppose a resilience to any challenges that we may face when these things become serious, and you have you know i- i- issues of water quality, or it might be flooding. So it all, but it starts at that small grassroots level, but it can be built up, and it's real. It has possibility for real changes that are on the ground, and that's for everyone's benefit. Um, with that, and that whole societal aspect that came with it was still a time where I wanted to try to get um that information, um um the objective of getting that to decision makers, but I was also kind of developing a more holistic view about how, yeah, that society and community part actually had a much more important role to play, and trying to outreach, and get us involved. So then, moving on to 2023, which was quite a pivotal year as regards flood and water management in Ireland. So um, we had a wet summer, as we all remember, and from kind of June, July onwards, it really felt like a lot of time it didn't stop raining. and that in the end on the climate series and the time series data, it ended up being the case that that it was one of the wettest years ever recorded on the island. With instances all around the country. In Dublin, I remember the Clontarf surface flooding in August from Storm Antony. Um, but I think what comes to mind for most people is Storm Babette and the severe flooding of the town of Middleton on 18th of October 2023. Um, I suppose this had hit the headlines for many reasons. You have the striking images here from the Coast Guard, the entire housing estates, the main street, the railway, everywhere just inundated. Um, the stories of people, traveling to from work, collecting the kids from school, going about their daily business, and this just happening in 5-10 minutes. Um, water up to your knees or whatever variable height at different locations. Just the speed, the rapid nature of it, the response, and by authorities, really is something I think of reflection. The fact that the fire brigade were the only really ones with the capacity, the resources, and the knowledge to be able to respond in the locality and put things in place, but they were so stretched. It was the whole town that was impacted. Um, and also the fact that Mount Erin, even though really highlighting the risks on that day, just limited by the county by county framework of the weather warning system. Only an orange weather warning had been issued for County Cork, and with no public flood information system, flood warning information system in place, then it's really difficult um, for them, and then even through the Cork County Council to be able to notify the residents. So yeah, that was quite a turning point for me. And and then I suppose the fact that this is really impacting people. There's a hazard and health and safety, and again these natural extreme events and but these processes, but whatever's happening between the land use, the extreme rainfall, the various flood pathways, the hydraulic pathways of what happened that day, and there'll be many investigations afterwards at a forensic level. But I think most importantly, 2 months later, the publication, and the first in Ireland of its kind, of the uh, climate change attribution, to scientifically prove that the event was 120% more likely under anthropogenic climate change, and that there was an increased intensity of 13% of the rainfall that day. And you can see the 2-day precipitation anomaly. So basically, how much more rain there was that day compared to the long-term average. And you can see just the extremity of it, the nature there. And I suppose then what the authors of that report then said in their final remarks and their conclusions was, one of the things was that risk that you have this hazard, this physical hazard, the extreme rainfall event coming from Babette, but you have this community that's quite exposed. Middleton being built, it's there's at least two large rivers and also a stream as well, groundwater impacts nearby as well, potential impacts, and then also tidal as well, with the Estuary in the sea not too far out. So you really could have a compound event here if everything culminated at once. So yeah, just looking at the vulnerability, and then again the capacity, were the proper resources there, were they prepared for this sort of eventuality, was it put in place? Like they're the questions to be asked, and you can see then the capacity will will um will limit the effects of those hazards and exposures and vulnerabilities. So yeah, that would kind of lead then into next year in 2024 when um, I looked at it through a project and an internship with one of the authors, Dr. Neve Cahill, through using various statistical techniques, looking at that multifactorial risk, so the other factors involved in risk, apart from just what the engineering department in Cork County Council or the Office of Public Works might look into with their flood maps and those physical parameters that are able to be resolved by modelling, but also looking at CAO data, sorry, the CSO data, sorry, census data, and Pubble data, various socio-economic indicators, and seeing where flood vulnerability on a social level lies. And you can see here some of the results in that East Cork area of, of combined those hazards, the exposure, and then the vulnerabilities as well, and how we're able to kind of map and see maybe where more resources are, and that can be scaled up and down, and that's something that I looked into as well. Just going over to the left for a second on a separate note, then last year 2024 was a lot of project progression took place in Rush and around what I wanted to work on. Really, I suppose all the previous years it culminated in like these ideas I had for real um, practical steps for things that could that were possible. They were realistic to do. We had the context now. The context, um, the funding behind us, and the bit of knowledge as well to implement them. So you can see here, this is an example of CoSnap, which is the idea of anyone with a mobile phone being able to take pictures over time of a coastline, seeing the morphological changes. So residents living nearby can have monitoring, try to understand the beach and those coastline dynamics and processes. Here we have the plumbing misconnection issue, and possibly how by making sure that any extensions or in any dwellings that your foul sewer and your stormwater sewer, there there's not a misconnection, and um foul water is ending up in stormwater and potentially then in heavy rainfall ending up in the environment and affecting, for example, bathing water quality during the summer. So, you know, liaising with the council, using the expertise of the water department, and then, helping residents step by step, whether it be through funding or like if it's a quick fix or what other measure or steps they have to take. So, stuff that, makes a difference and it gets people thinking and interested and involved. And the last one here, and I um, have to say a word for Phelim Harty and all the great work and also inspiration to me that he's given over the years for his various nature-based solution projects and designs um, in this example, so to do with stormwater filtration, and um, that was one of our other projects progressed through the Law Pro grant funding, was to do with having a housing estate, and instead of the stormwater inlet going straight through to the nearby stream and any microplastics or polluting effluents ending up then directly into the water body, that it passes through this constructed wetlands with your plants, your macrophytes, and it gets filtered. It has some residence time there to settle and to diffuse um those toxins and filter them, and then is more slowly um, uh, pass through the outlet into the water body. So thinking about those things. It was also a year a lot of skepticism, and like a lot of environmentalist people, knowledge in the area had to, try to communicate and lay out the science for people because, very understandably, people were frustrated with maybe measures that OPW or the council were or weren't doing, for in the likes of Cork, also in Kerry, Listowel later in the year, and other locations, Donegal as well, where they were saying that they would just see this diagram that the water level of the river was raised, that the bed was raised because of sediments and buildup of them, and that was causing high water levels. So there was more like a chance of inundation, and saying that it needs to be dredged, all needs to be cleared out, bring down those water levels. But I suppose just bring a bit of, if the physics and foundational physics and hydrology into it, that, you have to consider the wider picture of the water body, because, doing that, dredging it out, which will increase the velocity and the flow of that river, and if with less roughness. So perhaps downstream there might be negative impacts. So it's just about weighing up and taking into account that hydromorphology, and how fast, how and like where the water is moving to and from, and taking into account to try to come to the most balanced approach and solution. Um, yeah. And then 2025 and beyond, I suppose, personally for me, there was new beginnings here in Bacay, taking the step to start the International Land and Water Management program. And I really hope that, like, through this kind of multidisciplinary approach, the social and technical perspective, that it'll lay foundations in the understanding of these land and water processes for me, and then just the wider sided impacts and how we can make those changes. And I suppose, all the past few years is really culminating in me kind of heading towards this as the rest of my life and career, I suppose. And I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, so we'll just briefly then look at the interconnectedness of water systems. So um, going from the Rogerstown to the Rhine, it's two very different catchments and sizes and different uses and needs from the community around, and the habitats surrounding it as well. Um, my local sub-basin, as the EPA would categorise it, back in Rush, is called the Balconnen sub-basin. Drainage area of 12 kilometres squares, quite small, and mainly draining this area here of the agricultural hinterlands around North County Dublin. Very free draining soil, and productive as well, but also going through these urban areas. A comment back in the 19th century um, about how we were badly supplied with rivers in the North County is interesting. It's interesting to note with the I suppose greater uh, variety of the wind powered mills in the area. So we do have an interesting hydrological and catchment setup around. So it is rather small, but still interesting to look at and dynamic. Um, Looking at just two examples, the um, the first, from the map there in the north, an agriculture and water interface. So here you have during the summer, when there's more of a demand on less moisture in the soil and a need for more moisture for the crops, that some flow restrictions, damming is put in place by farmers, and for abstraction purposes and pumping water out. So this is where the two come and collide in a sense, because you're looking and saying you know is there going to be impacts of siltation or blockage for any of the fauna and any fish populations along the stream, but also taking into account that this water course is on their land, on the farm's land, and that they've been using it over certain generations, to be able to sustain their growth in the industry. So it's really kind of a balancing act between the two, and how we can try and make these two work together and two perspectives, and make changes either in the land and water use to try to be able to balance it out for both the environment and the humans and their interaction in between. So then looking at another example, number two on the map closer to the built up areas is construction water interface. And this is a aerial image of a Ballymore developed site. Um, and it's a new development on what a long time back would have been agricultural land turned to wasteland and now housing development. But I could see the rush of the town Brook Stream runs straight through it and intersects the site. And obviously this is a, a point for concern about flooding or impediments to the construction, but at the same time, it's a habitat as well. It has this riparian zone along the banks, and there's a lot to be protected there in between the water quality and the microinvertebrates in the water, and then the rest of the habitat it sustains around. So obviously, it's put under a lot of pressure with all the activity happening around it, the human activity. So, as a Tide Towns committee, we went forward to contact the site and the landscape architecture project managers to see what changes could be or what measures could be put in place, like silt netting and stuff, to try to make sure that during the construction phase there wouldn't be pollution or any adverse impacts on the environment and the stream. And then also how in the plans as well as that's set down in regulation, like the attenuation ponds and stormwater filtration through gravel and various mediums, how you could ensure that riparian zone, that green area would and that there would be that buffer there and to protect kind of that space. And so they were very happy to they wanted to learn, and they were happy to take on the feedback on board, and got in touch with the Law Pro Inland Fisheries Ireland, um, and have those plans now, and even assisted with the tide towns with any removal of large objects and pollutants, and just cleaning up and just respecting, I suppose, being that steward that the stream needs. And just to mention about the Inland Fisheries Ireland as well, because they assisted with the other the damming issue that I had on the last slide, and that like their officers do a lot of really detailed and forensic work on the desk, having a really good knowledge of that vast amount of environment data, but going out into the field as well, and looking at the things hands on. So in both these scenarios, actually, they assisted us a lot, and I have to thank them for that, and really learned a lot from their insights as well. And again, it's about being pragmatic and stepping up, contacting the people, like getting the freedom of information, or making sure that that regulation is being abided by. So it's really important to take that into account. So then going on to the Rhine River Basin, much larger, the second longest river in Europe, in fact, 185,000 kilometers squared drainage area, um, running from the Alps up in Switzerland, all the way down to the North Sea. And along the way in the delta part of the Rhine is the Netherlands, and that red dot where I am in Wageningen. And as the quote goes from the philosopher Descartes, um, God made the earth, but the Dutch made Holland, because as we'll see now here, um, many of you will know that a lot of, because of being a delta, many different channels, and with the variations in flow during the year, a lot of opportunities that with the low elevations, many below sea level, that between the fresh water and the sea, that flooding, and it's a fully marsh. So over time, this was man-made, artificially created, all the various polders, dikes put into place, and then later pumps and other water management methods to make to ensure this the water vigalid, or the water safety. And that was the key objective. If it was a government authority, one of the water boards here in the Netherlands, or any other developments were happening, the water vigalid, the water safety, would trump everything. You have to ensure that our built-up areas won't get inundated if it's 1 in 100 year, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 year, and ensuring that those dikes, as you can see here, the vertical dikes or the levees are built up, um, so that we can ensure that water safety. But I suppose with the realities of changing climate more extreme, and also a biodiversity crisis as well, with a lot of these wetland habitats being wiped out in the original developments of the country, there really had to be a change. And instead of building up, giving horizontal space and room for the river, as it's called. And this has been a really large, and I think overall positive development and impacts, because of the fact that it's allowed the rivers to go and be a more natural behaviour, go into their natural states, and given that space for the biodiversity to flourish again. And also putting even the pressure off the water safety, because you don't have to worry about the engineering and the foundations for the vertical structures. And that, yes, maybe some farmland will be flooded for a certain amount of time during the winter, and you won't have access, but you're looking at the risks and the vulnerabilities, and the fact that there's an extra barrier and a buffer between the built up areas is really key. So it's been a big development. Also, like, replicate like what in Ireland is happening with citizen science, law pro CSI index, and the various organisations. It's happening here as well in the municipalities throughout the country. Citizen labs are going and doing testing, and often taking the ethos and the philosophy of drinkable rivers, and learning from the rivers, and again being the steward, standing up and understanding them as a real life entity, and part of us all, I suppose. And this is especially fitting on the Rhine, where you had a history of those industrial heartlands upstream in Germany and stuff, and the heavy metals and chemicals that have slowly been cleaned and mitigated against, and starting to come back into that state where we can say that the Rhine is a drinkable river again. So really positive steps forward. Um, Looking at the criticisms of technology, just as a short section, I always just say it's a careful balancing act between many positives, but the negatives and the drawbacks that we just have to be careful of going into. So just to briefly go over these as well. Um, some of the positives, I think, in my opinion, the citizen science, um, the access to many apps, because we have mobile devices with cameras, and we can record things on the go, out in many different locations, if it's really remote or urban, around neighborhood and blocks, um, um, with access to affordable sensors, and um, just telecommunications itself. Things are able to communicate and connect, and the internet, and be able to share these things, so that researchers can get a better understanding, a higher resolution understanding of these things. It's all within kind of my kind of first principle, and my kind of first motivations of being able to kind of try to understand the natural process more, and hopefully you know feed back then into these communities, and be able to make them, protect them, and make them more resilient to any extremes that may occur, and using nature as a solution to help with that. Remote sensing as well, kind of related, but just the fact that there's not any kind of division or any like it's so broad that it's not just decided because of the accessibility to a location or whether the funding or the resources or the people are there to be able to conduct the experiments, the studies, observations. That, like with satellites, this is the ESA, the European Space Agency Sentinel-2 satellite, and it uses different spectrums of light to be able to measure different feedbacks of Earth uh, through that monitoring, like sea temperature, land temperature, um, and many more things as well, due to the reflections of the Earth, and yeah, and just like the colossal amounts of data, but really like broad, and like the applications I see many every day and week, and it's really inspiring to see what's happening in that area. But also to give the other side of the scales as well, and the negatives, and to keep that in mind, that with those cost amount of data, you can often end up in a data trap, where you end up you're um, you're analyzing it all, and it's you're ending up in loops, creating more data, and like are you really kind of you know eh, have you lost the original goal or the original objective of what you're trying to do, and like where does it kind of go between, like, yes, having such a like a specific understanding, but also I suppose that more holistic view of like what what the in like the intricacies are of, like, trying to understand the process, or what the outcome will be, or what the goal is, and and I think that building resilience and capacities, and kind of focusing on those more practical solutions rather than over analyzing at times, and relying on these things, relying like that quantitative objective measure, kind of looking at it more qualitatively, can be good. And that kind of leads into then the ambiguity of models in this example from the mountains in Kerry, and the fact that through remote sensing that that a model kind of classified and that area just highlighted yellow as a scrub, while in reality on the ground, and with the knowledge of the community, that that is actually a small, pristine piece of Atlantic rainforest, and something that's really rare and really important to try to conserve. And there's so much flora and fauna that depend on that little piece of habitat, but just at kind of sometimes a coarse scale of the models, that it doesn't comprehend these things. So having that capacity, that knowledge, education, interest in the community is really important to try to kind of, I think, build things up holistically, keep everyone on board, because yeah, it can often, with the proliferation of all these new and, yes, exciting and innovative ways of looking at the problems, you have to keep those key goals in mind. um and that also goes on nicely then to my whole ethos and philosophy of pragmatic optimism, and to keep with the water metaphor, the glass half full, in this case, and that, yes, it's good to be optimistic, it's good to have a fresh outlook, keep new ideas coming, and try to drive them forward. But at the same time, no matter if it's how small or big, or if it's a low hanging fruit, or a much harder challenge, just to try be try to be brave, make those steps, and the steps forward to the practical solutions, and things that are tangible. You're able to bring along people, and that from that grassroots level up, and yeah, build the interest, um, and the capacity within the community to be able to feel that the changes matter to them, that it'll make a positive difference, and that it's good to do both for the society, and the environment, and especially I suppose water in this case, all the things it does for us, and for the rest of the earth as well, and using those tools and the knowledge we have. So really, as a take-home message, to keep that in mind, and hopefully inspire in your own in steps, in your own circumstances and scenarios. And just to finish as well, I suppose, on that inspiring foot as well. It's a group that I look up to a lot, of groups of people in many parts of the world, and in this case in the North Americas, and the indigenous communities, and they're, really like holistic, and very very heart to heart relationship and feeling with these entities, whether it be um any part of the land, in this case the water, um and like the fact that all these statements are true, that it is the veins, running through the land, the lifeblood of Mother Earth, and it's everything to us, it's life itself, and it is sacred, with so many issues of water security, and for fresh water in many parts of the world. And most importantly, it's a symbol of our sovereignty. Um, and that sovereignty is, our commands, our, eh, you know, liberty to have that access to have the various things it provides, and provide for us in many different ways. Um, and we should keep that in mind. Um, I think at all points, and take that inspiration onwards. Um, so yeah, um, that's all. I want to thank you for attending and listening, and I hope you found it interesting and thought provoking in different ways. Um, Feel free to ask any questions, or if um, any other longer questions or anything at all, you can send me an email there as well to the address. And yeah, thanks again to Green Foundation Ireland and Kieran, and yeah, have a lovely evening.